one I've figured out anyway. Let's get to our great guest host today. He's a key player on Capitol Hill. He's 40 now, too, I just found out. Involved in several key pieces of legislation. Republican Representative Paul Ryan is our guest host, ranking member of the Budget Committee. And you should be able, hopefully, Congressman, to explain to us, or at least highlight to us, what some people thought looked like a weird tack on McConnell's part in saying that this just enables too big to fail to almost become permanent. That almost looked like, some people might say that looked like the only answer you could come up with to oppose something that I guess this administration wants badly. Does it really institutionalize too big to fail?
If you're going to deem very large interconnected firms systemically risky, you're going to have a fund, whether the fund's there or not, you're going to have a fund that is pre-funded to bail them out. When that happens, then the market will perceive that they have a tether to the taxpayer, just like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac did.
But it's by their peers. But the fund is from their peers.
Sure,
not
but
from
they
the
will
taxpayer.
get cheaper money than their competitors. So if you are deemed systemically risky, then there is a perception in the marketplace that you will be bailed out, and therefore you will get cheaper credit than your competitors.
When you
and
get
so that's
bailed out,
the theory that Mitch is invoking when talking about this.
When you get bailed out, though, a lot of times the shareholders get washed out anyway. You're not talking about
Sure,
making shareholders.
and I would take a look at the nature of this bill. It leaves it up to political appointees at the FDIC to decide what creditors get what. Right. And you'll have creditors in the same exact status getting different results. And so, to me, that sort of turns the whole rule of law and the credit markets on its head. And so, the problem I have with this bill is it's a whole new layer of bureaucracies on top of the other ones. It puts in more of disruption and concern about how this is going to play out. It turns the rule of law on its head. I really think a market-based trigger is the better way to go. If you take a look at national affairs, Luigi Zingales, Oliver Hart, they got a great piece that walks you through how you could put a market-based trigger, CDS spreads, that then invoke a trigger where you have to give up new equity or you have to have contingent debt or convertible debt. That, to me, is a far smarter way to go versus having political appointees decide when and if they're going to act before something happens, and then how to untangle these things and how to sort creditors out. So to me, you know, I really worry this thing's going down the path of politicizing how we sort out problems in our credit markets, in the markets, versus having something where the market polices itself with real transparency.
And I'm guessing that suggestions by Senator Collins that they might be willing to give up the fund, that would not change your mind.
No, because it's the entire architecture of this approach is the problem that people like me have. The fund is a big part of the problem, but that's a symptom. It's the underlying attitude and aspect and architecture of this bill and how it's being done.
Although there
are
some good things in this bill.
Sure, there are some good things in this bill.
Ideas of saying, okay, you have to hold on to, let's say, 5% of anything that you're writing.
Better margins, higher capital ratios. You have to put some of these things on exchanges and trading platforms.
Yeah,
everybody agrees with this stuff. What the clearinghouses, what I have a problem with is extra layers of bureaucracies that will actually codify too big to fail, that will position larger firms at the expense of smaller firms. It sort of goes down what I call the road of crony capitalism, where the government is basically picking winners and losers in the marketplace, and large established firms say, I want to be a winner, so I'm going to get myself into that position, and that comes at the expense of the smaller and medium-sized firms in America.
Did you see this O'Driscoll piece
No, I
today?
hadn't.
I'm going to give this to you because he says when governments and business collude, it's called crony capitalism. Expect more of this from the financial reforms contemplated in Washington. This is a Gerald O'Driscoll piece. He's a Cato guy, a senior fellow at Cato.
Yeah, who he is.
But he makes some interesting points about what happens when...
Look, I spent the 1990s sitting on Fannie and Freddie's oversight committee in the beginning when I first got into Congress with Richard Baker, introducing bill after bill to try and tame and bring back Fannie and Freddie. We got our heads handed to us in Congress from our own party in many aspects. I see this thing repeating itself. We're kind of creating Fannies and Freddies writ large throughout the financial sector with this kind of a bill, and that's the big problem I have.
That might be the easiest way to understand crony capitalism and the end result of I mean, there's nothing closer than Fannie and Freddie to some quasi-government profit-making entity that was absolutely able, with that implied government guarantee,
it doesn't matter
anything they wanted.
It could be $5 in the bailout fund or $500 billion in the bailout fund. The fact that there's a tether to the taxpayer that exists changes the perception in the marketplace, and these firms, therefore, get cheaper credit at the expense of their competitors. That's what Fannie and Freddie did.
But
They crowded out the marketplace.
It's a fund that's funded by the banks themselves.
If government takes this money, that's taxes, and puts it in a fund and then gives it to them, that's still taxes.
Well,
you can call it what you want. It's still taxes.
It's the FDIC fund, the same thing, right?
It's still taxes. The point is, government is taking money from the private sector and then giving it to somebody else. And that somebody else are these interconnected firms that are deemed systemically risky and therefore favored in the eyes of the credit markets as being a safer bet because they'll get bailed out if things go down.
For a while, it looked like Republicans were okay with the idea of transparency in the derivatives market.
Absolutely.
Until it became clear that the transparency would cause the margins to go sharply lower for Wall Street.
No, I think we should have transparency in derivatives markets. I think we should have a trading platform. Yeah, I do think we should have.
So you're okay with that?
I'm okay with that.
A lot of guys,
no, I know.
A lot of your peers in the Senate are not. Is that going to happen?
I don't know. But I do think you need, look, we can quibble between, exchanges and how to go about doing this. I do think you have to go in that direction. That's what you do to clean up CDSs. CDSs are not evil, bad things. I think you just need to clean up how they work and make sure that there's transparency on these, because CDSs can give you good market signals. And I would argue we ought to have a system like what Zingales and Hart are arguing for, to have a market trigger, not a political trigger, where Treasury can go on a 24-hour notice to a few judges and take over a company because they think that they might go into default. That, to me, is a very dangerous precedent. I worry it's going to turn off the rule of law, or the perception of the rule of law in the U.S. capital markets, and make us much less competitive.
But the FDIC makes calls on the solvency of banks all the time. How is
banks,
that different?
We're going into far more exotic instruments. We're going into far more complicated businesses here. The FDIC, yeah, cash deposits, and they can get somebody, Waymo, that stuff can be done in a couple of days. They're going to be sitting on companies for months, maybe years, in some kind of a receivership. This is something the FDIC is not used to doing. And so I would just simply argue that this is not something that their technical expertise is up to. The market will easily circumvent any kind of roadblock they put in front of these things.
Like they did with credit rating agencies?
Yeah. So I just feel like we're putting another layer of bureaucracy on top. We didn't catch this last problem. What makes you think that more of the same regulators is going to catch it the next time? I would have more transparency, more accountability, more market-based mechanisms.
You said yourself that there's never, in one of the articles I read, you said yourself that you can't always legislate exactly what you'd like. You have to choose the lesser of two evils. Right. Is this bill, the way it stands, worse than the status quo? Yeah,
I think so. I think it sends the wrong signals, and I think it does give us a too-big-to-fail permanent mentality. I think it does position large interconnected firms against smaller firms. And look, we have this huge commission that's supposed to give us, untangle the mess. We haven't even read the commission's report yet. They haven't even given us the answer until December. And we're going to do all this legislating before the commission even tells us what they found.
A lot more from the congressman throughout the show. When we come back this morning, Dow component J&J has